I'll look forward to asking Angela about that tonight. And I want to hear her reflections because she's obviously a very intelligent, cool lady. I really like Angela. I think she's a great chair for the Libertarian Party. Certainly much better than Nicholas Sarwark, who's not my favorite chair.
Speak of an angel.
Hi there, Angela.
Angela McArdle.
Hi there.
Hey,
How's
you
it
got
going?
here, were your ears burning? You got here just in the nick of time.
What's going on? What's the conjecture? Tell me about it.
Oh, we're just beefing. We're just bitching about the Libertarians. I don't know if you heard the first part of the show, but I was explaining that I left the Libertarian Party back in February because of the whole kerfuffle over Scott Ritter at Rage Against the War Machine rally. And I don't know if you want to address that, because I know you went to bat for him and
out
tried to
of
help.
respect for him, I wouldn't, because he asked me not to. I don't.
Roger that.
I don't want it to sound like I'm dodging an important question, but I did have a chat with him about not dragging out the details, and I wouldn't want to do that without his express permission.
Right.
No, I respect that. That's just integrity. You're off to a good foot with me, Mrs. Libertarian.
Yeah, my goal is to drag as few people through the mud as possible. Just generally, politics are ugly. It's full of mudslinging. I try to sling the least amount of mud.
Well, that's what this show is all about. We're not here to debate, fight, argue. We're here to find common ground.
Yeah.
And as you probably know, my co-host here, Tyler, is a communist.
That's me.
And
that's me.
We're just trying to bridge that political divide.
She cringed.
Okay.
She's reaching for a drink.
I know. I was like, oh, geez, I don't have it. What do I grasp at?
There you go.
I don't even have a drinking straw. Nothing.
Well, you can tell by the flag. I still love the country, which is, me and my good friend Caleb Maupin, who was also there at Rage Against the War Machine. Yep. We talk about that a lot, that the label communist, even though it's closest to our legitimate beliefs, makes us cringe sometimes, because it's usually a bunch of pink-haired leftists yelling about how much America sucks and what bathroom to use, and that's not us. For us, it's a government of the people, by the people, and for the people that puts the people first. But it's not our episode, Angela. That was last week. It's your episode this week, and we've got two libertarians up here. I'm the odd man out. So tell me, Angela, what is libertarianism? Why should I be interested?
Libertarians want to see people live their lives like to the fullest potential with individualism. We're all about individual rights, free markets, free speech, property rights, the right to bear arms. Like, we respect the individual, and we want to see that philosophy upheld through a country's legal framework. We want to see individuals respected. That's really what we're about.
Okay.
Absolutely. And, I wanted to sort of, again, since we're trying to find common ground, there's a concept, Tyler, that you and I have talked about before. And I wanted to bring Angela into this to see what she thinks too. That many of the communist revolutions around the world were inspired by the American Declaration of Independence, right?
Yep.
And, they have a thing in communism that they call the dictatorship of the proletariat. And as I understand it from my studies, I personally don't see any difference between the dictatorship of the proletariat and we the people. To me, that means the same thing. Am I wrong?
I mean, I'm not the person to answer that. I think
I
think
threw
that's
you
a
a
question
curveball,
for
didn't I?
Tyler.
I love the way Lori put that. Like, when she said it, it clicked with me, and that's really what we want. But for my side of the fence, we lived through McCarthyism. As we talked about last week, what we really believe is so absolutely buried in this country that you have to really dig to figure it out. But ideally, at the end of the day, and I feel this would be maybe common ground with Angela, is my feeling is, if we're going to have a government at all, It should work to help working people, everyday people, and not a handful of psychopathic billionaires on Wall Street running cartel monopolies, crushing the American worker.
Absolutely. So here's a maybe something that I think on the surface we wouldn't agree on, but if we really dug in and tried, I bet we would find common ground. There are some regulatory frameworks set up that make it very difficult for American companies to compete with overseas companies. Generally speaking, people on the left present it as though, we need a lot of regulation to keep workers safe, to keep working environments safe so that they're not taken advantage of. I wonder if there's more to it than that, and if a lot of regulatory frameworks, maybe not all, like I'm gonna be not hardcore radical on this. I'm gonna look for common ground. I wonder if some of them are set up just so that it's very difficult for other people to go into business and be competitive, and it makes these companies into like giant monopolies when they shouldn't be. Really, they shouldn't dominate the market. And I think there's a lot of regulatory, barriers to entry in the market that maybe they don't need to be there. And if they weren't, maybe we would have more American jobs.
Like we often say as libertarians, like having to have a license to braid hair seems kind of dumb.
Well, so healthcare, and that's a really loaded one. And I get, like, as someone who's been in and out of the hospital a whole lot, my adult life, I get believe me, the arguments for affordable healthcare. When I do have to go into the hospital, and thankfully it's been a little while, they run you through a battery of tests, and they have a ton of equipment in there. And I'm always like, why? Because I want to know more. And they're like, well, we have to. Okay. But that doesn't tell me, right? And it's usually, well, because of insurance, because of regulation. We have to check your blood pressure every 4 hours. We have to draw your blood every day. And I'm like, it seems like that's probably driving up my bill. I'm not here for my heart's not going to explode. What are we doing? I'm having stomach issues.
They charge you $9 for an aspirin in the hospital.
Yeah, $80 for a Band-Aid.
I just wonder about some of this stuff. Like if there was a little bit of relaxing on the regulations, if things would be more affordable for us, and maybe we would also have more job opportunities.
Well, I mean, I think we could agree with that on healthcare, with like Obamacare. Like, what is that? Wasn't it originally called Romney Care?
Yes.
And it's just like a loaded gun to someone's head to force them to buy from a monopoly insurance company. Right? I don't like that. That sounds horrible. That sounds like a dictatorship of the bourgeoisie is what it sounds like to me.
There you go.
Not a government of the people.
That's
I like it.
So
Angela, tell us a little bit about the libertarian position on Medicare for all, or national health care.
We are not in favor of government health care. We are highly skeptical of the government running health care. Government seems to be really good at killing people overseas. We're not so great. We're not trusting them to keep people alive here.
Well, after the last 3 years, who could blame you? I mean, we've seen
and then
what
I
an
look
absolute
at
mess that was.
I look at the VA, and I think I don't want that for anyone, especially not people in the military with PTSD. They're calling the suicide helpline, and it's connecting them to a 900 number.
That's right.
Heaven forbid it become the Canadian model where they're told to kill themselves.
Oh man, I laugh to keep from crying.
I know,
but
it's awful.
I think on almost all of this, we're going to agree, Angela. I'll save my hard questions for like the last 10 minutes of the interview.
Cool.
Let's talk about where we agree. I don't see this government. This isn't our government. It's a government of a wealthy elite. And it's not, I don't even know if the wealth is the problem. It's like an oligarchy, it's a concentrate. It's just not our government. So when you talk crap on the government, on the American government, I'm going to agree with everything you say, because this isn't our government. They, like I said, they put a gun to your head and force you to buy private insurance, right? They send $200 billion to the Ukraine. They've got a military factory in every state. So the military industrial complex keeps pumping out weapons to kill brown children overseas, blow up school buses in Yemen when you see U.S. arms on the side of the missile. Like, we're going to agree with that because this isn't our government, you know? So I have a lot of sympathy for libertarians that hate the government, especially in America, because they can see this government ain't for you. This government does any kind of program for you. It's not really going to be for you.
Oh, man, I wish I could just have you, maybe I can clip that recording and then play that for my friends on the left to remind them, like, it's not really for you. They don't really care about
America. You. No. I think we may disagree later on about if it's possible at all.
Mm-hmm.
In a people's government, as they say, a people's house. Isn't that Dr. Seuss book? I've been reading a lot of Green Eggs and Ham with a 5-year-old at home. So, but yeah. So we agree on that. Absolutely. Now, Angela,
but Ukraine, they get free health care, but we don't.
And conscription. So
yeah,
they promise to treat you after they ship you off to war and riddle you full of bullet holes like Swiss cheese.
Yeah,
but they let you reach the ripe age of 13 first.
Oh, lovely. Jeez.
Well, you were just talking about healthcare costs, Angela, and I can relate because I have long COVID and I've spent the last 3 years in and out of hospitals getting all kinds of expensive treatments and tests done, and the cost is absolutely bankrupting me. And it sounds like you've been down this road yourself. So we can all agree that here in this capitalist healthcare system that it's just too damn expensive. The drugs are too damn high. The treatment is overinflated. And sometimes the quality of care is not the best, to put it mildly. So my question would be, how can we find common ground somewhere between Medicare for all, where your costs are paid by the taxpayers if you can't afford it, and the privatized healthcare system that we currently have that I think we can all admit is unaffordable and isn't working. It's broken. Is there some place in the middle where we can find a compromise that's not Obamacare?
Thailand has much more affordable healthcare than we do, and it is not crappy. It is clean. It is high quality. It is professional. I don't think that it is government mandated healthcare, but it is far less regulated. And I think that would be an interesting model to compare to maybe some of the government healthcare countries that you or Tyler might suggest and say, have superior healthcare to the United States. I think you will find a common theme there, which is that these businesses have a lot more control over some of the things, some of the practices and things that they get to do. And there's less checklists. We'll call it that. There's less checklists and things they're forced to do in their day-to-day operations. So I'd start there. I want something that's more affordable. We're getting robbed on our tax dollars anyway. I'm willing to kind of like set some of those issues aside while we just sort of dig deeper and try to find a better model and something that's better for everyone.
Right. I heard an interview you did not long ago with Jimmy Dore, where he pressed you on Medicare for All and asked if you would be willing to maybe make an exception in the libertarian philosophy for that, for healthcare for all Americans. And I believe you said that on a personal level, yes, that you could be persuaded to do that. Now, bringing the rest of the party with you might be tricky.
The context that we were talking about it was, with the specter of nuclear war, there's no economic theory when you're in nuclear winter. Like, that's pretty much it.
Right.
It's, and so what I wanted to convey to Jimmy is that, I would want to set those sort of arguments aside in times of crises and focus on making us safe, because we can't even iron out an economic model or a healthcare model like if our sons and daughters are being shipped off to war, if we're all bled dry financially by the Federal Reserve just printing dollars. It's like the Federal Reserve is like a lonely man, and the Ukraine war is like a very sexy stripper, and it's just money.
Oh boy!
And we're just making it rain, baby, making it rain.
Making it rain.
Well, yeah, I think we can agree there's a better use for our tax dollars than funding these forever wars and sending billions to Ukraine or Taiwan or whoever the flavor of the week is, whoever we're picking a fight with this month. But, as far as the healthcare question goes, Robert F. Kennedy Jr. was interviewed this week and was asked if he supports Medicare for all. And I thought his answer was the most sane and balanced and logical one that I've heard yet, in that he supports in theory anyway, if it's possible to get it through Congress is another story, but a single payer system for those who desire it or can't afford private health insurance, and that there would be a private option for anybody who wants to have private health insurance. And to me, that makes a lot of sense. As a libertarian, I'd rather see my tax dollars go to that, to taking care of our own people, keeping us healthy, taking care of us, than funding these forever wars and a lot of the foreign aid and foreign spending that we're just throwing away overseas. What do you think?
That'd be a much better option. And I mean, if I had to trade, I would definitely do a trade. Like that's not a difficult choice.
Right?
Well, I think the $200 billion we've sent Zelensky would pay for that for at least 20 years, I'd say.
One of the things that makes me nervous about government healthcare, and I bet you guys can sympathize with me on this one, is what we went through recently. Speaking of RFK Jr., that if you're forced onto a plan, or if it's the only thing affordable, you're lulled into thinking it's safe, and then they say you got to get the shot.
That's my fear.
Insurance.
Right.
And we've seen, some really sad stories about people being denied organ transplants and so on and so forth because they didn't receive certain medical procedures first. We've seen that, and we don't even have Medicare for all. It makes me nervous. We don't have it, and yet we've already adopted a lot of the government propaganda and stuff. So it's almost like you get all the policies of Medicare for all, but none of the coverage. Is that
right?
Is that kind of jive?
Yeah, we got all the authoritarianism and none of the benefits.
Yeah.
Well, that's what I'll say. I just say the governments that actually call themselves communists, it's my understanding that China didn't force anyone to take the vaccine. That's my understanding. Now, the governments that you might think of as communist, like the social democratic governments, which Stalin called the left wing of fascism, I think they did. So that's interesting as well. Yeah. But it comes down to who is the government for? Is it for the people, or is it for the P company that ends with an Iser? Is it their government instead? That's the interesting difference. But I would like to ask you.
We know the answer, don't we?
Brought to you by anyway.
We're on YouTube. Be careful.
I'm careful. That's why
we won't be on YouTube for
That's
long.
That's right. Which is also a sign that we're living in a very free place, right?
Right.
As we talk around topics on this big, nice video platform. But I was just kind of curious, Angela, like, you're the chair of the Libertarian National Committee. How did you get to be that thing? What brought you there?
Really, the party's failure to speak out against lockdowns in 2020 was why I announced my intention to run for chair. I was the chair of the Libertarian Party of Los Angeles County. Prior to that, I'd been the secretary of the California State Party. The LA County Party is huge. It's I believe the 9th largest affiliate in the country, including state affiliates. So it's more on par with. It's a large operation, so it wasn't actually as big of a leap as it might sound for me to go from one to the other. I traveled across the country. I made a compelling case. I put in a lot of work. I shook a lot of hands, but I listened to a lot of grievances. That's a big part of my job is people being
Libertarians always have grievances, don't we, dear?
People being mad at you, or people being mad at someone else and wanting to tell you about it, or take it out on you. And so I think I have a thick skin. That's a big part of this job.
Definitely.
But it's rewarding. It's a rewarding job.
I was wanting to ask you a little bit about your personal journey politically and how you became a libertarian in the first place.
I've been a libertarian pretty much my entire adult life. I started calling myself a libertarian when I was a teenager. I was very interested in politics as a child. I was in 4th grade, and lobbying aggressively, campaigning for George Bush in our mock presidential election. That's got to be one of the most cringe moments of my life.
You mean Bush 41 or Bush 43? Which George Bush?
I think Bush 41. Yeah.
1988 or 92?
No, wait. No, it would have been his second campaign where he lost, I think.
Yeah, 92.
Yeah, 92. Yeah, where he lost. Yeah. Oh, poor 9-year-old
Poor
Angela.
Ross
Hey, that's
Perot.
okay. I debated for Barack Obama in 2008, and you can't get any worse than that.
So
So
there
We
you
all
go.
made mistakes along the way.
Yeah. But I became a libertarian when I was like 17 in a
Cool.
very superficial, shallow way, very much like a Republican who's okay with smoking weed and gay marriage. That's really it. And a few years later, I read G. Edward Griffin's book, The Creature from Jekyll Island,
Mm-hmm.
and that completely imploded my worldview.
Me too.
Dramatic change. I became very terrified of central banking and the Federal Reserve, and I sat in my house like paranoid for a week, like, oh, they're going to get me. They're going to get me. The world's going to collapse. The world's going to collapse. Like absolutely freaked out. And then a few years after that, I learned about Ron Paul when he was running. And then I realized there's like a whole bunch of other people out there freaking out, hiding in their houses too, because they're terrified of central banking. And but there was this weird thing, like it's in the GOP, but the GOP doesn't like him, and he didn't win. And so I was like, oh, it's the Libertarian Party trying to do this weird crossover thing. So that was how I became like a much more educated libertarian and learned about the Libertarian Party and the whole liberty movement, and that I was not the lone weirdo out there hating the Federal Reserve.
So you're also a Ron Paul libertarian. What do you think about the existing reality? Because here you are, chair of the Libertarian Party, and yet you recognize, as well as I do, you're a political realist, that in order to get elected, Ron Paul always had to run in the Republican Party, and Rand Paul the same, Representative Massey, Justin Amash. Do you think that there will come a time when libertarian candidates or real libertarians can just be libertarians and run as libertarians and win as libertarians?
I do, and I think it's going to take some time. So this is the answer that no one wants to hear. For the past 50 years, I think the party has adopted a high time preference strategy. They care about the here and now. They care about what's happening immediately. They don't want to put in the work to have a long-lasting infrastructure. We have high turnover in our elections internally, which are essentially popularity contests, and they're not necessarily based on who is going to do like the best work, you know. And it's just
this sounds like the Communist Party USA, believe it or not.
See, I told you.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
There's a lot earlier.
There's a lot of similarities to
the left wing of the Democrats.
Oh, we fight amongst ourselves, boy.
The narcissism and dysfunction of minor parties is really bad. And so I'm trying really hard to break it. And
that's why I like you. I like what you're doing with the party.
It's challenging. It's challenging work. It requires a lot of really painful self-reflection and admitting like things don't work. You're trying this, it doesn't work. People get offended, you know, heaven forbid. It's okay. You know, we can all get offended and still survive. People have put in a lot of work, and the reality is that sometimes years of work is work in the wrong direction. And so it's like, I'm kind of coming in like a consultant and digging around and going, this didn't work, that didn't work. And a lot of people want quick fixes and they want to see like something magical happen right away.
Right now.
And we've had some really amazing moments, but it's really been a lot of digging through policies, procedures, ways that we conduct business internally, problems with the bylaws. What are the hangups with using Robert's Rules of Order, you know? And it's not necessarily that I want to like toss it out, but I'm like, let's just be aware of all of these problems. What are the problems with, you know, like a 2-year term, you know, when you elect someone? But is electing someone for 4 years the answer? Maybe not. You know, what if you get stuck with someone really bad? So
Right.
One of the things that I've been discussing lately, which is totally, off limits, I'm not supposed to say, is the size of our organization, our governing board. By all reasonable professional metrics, is too large.
So that's what I was going to ask you. What's some of the duties of the chair? I guess organizational stuff like that.
Yep. I drive projects forward. I kind of pick what political projects we're going to do. There's board governance. I work pretty closely with staff. I troubleshoot problems. I'm very much a go-between, a liaison. I'm the voice of the party since we don't have, presidential candidate right now. There's a lot of boring technical behind the scenes stuff that I do, a lot of analysis, and a lot of going out and asking people for advice. That is probably that is something I cannot understate, is like going out and talking to people. In my opinion, that they need to be like 50 years or older and have done similar stuff, sat on governing boards, been in politics, like people with a wealth of knowledge. I'm always clamoring to learn more and to try to develop institutional memory and documentation.
Yes.
It's just, and to bring people in and to mentor them and to share as much information as possible, no matter how unpleasant it is. Like, we have to know things. So that's a lot of what I'm doing. I do plenty of public speaking, and I do fun stuff, and I go out, but the bulk of my day is just really digging in, trying to understand these processes so that we can implement our policies in the future and be successful and have a freer place to live.
Well, that brings me to, well, it kind of ties into my last question. I know that, of course, when you're in the administrative part of a party, it's easy to get bogged down in procedure and sometimes lose sight of the bigger goal, which is winning elections. And to me, and converting people to libertarianism and growing the party. But, I've watched this movement grow over my 27 years in the party. I've watched America catching up to us finally. I mean, what's trending on Twitter this week, thanks to the Durham report? Everyone's saying we should abolish the FBI.
Amazing.
And I'm like, hello, Ron Paul's been saying that for 40 years. We've been saying that forever. We're the Libertarian Party.
And we definitely agree on this side of the fence on that one as well. Sure. They were created to destroy us. So
I think my point is, it feels like we're finally at the moment, Angela, that I've been waiting for all my life. You've been waiting for all your life, where polls are showing that if it's a rematch between Trump and Biden in 2024, that some 60% of Americans, and I think that number is growing every day, would vote third party or independent if they had a party and a candidate that they could identify with and believe in and go all the way with. And they have to feel that the party is serious. And so for years, I've been trying to tell people, when I bring up the fact that I'm a libertarian, you know the drill. They laugh. They say, oh, the libertarians, they're not serious. And I'm like, oh, they're very serious.
We're serious.
You're the only party that's got ballot access in all 50 states. You're the oldest third party in the United States, more than 50 years now. And you've got a lot of organization and party apparatus and to actually do this. And so, in my opinion, all you really need is the candidate. And so that leads me to my next question. Tell me about who is emerging as a potential libertarian nominee for 2024. Tell me about some of your candidates.
So we don't have a big candidate yet. There's a bunch of conjecture and whispering about people who are going to pop out closer to the end of the year. Right now, we've got some grassroots candidates. You've got Mike Termott from Virginia. You've got Lars Mapstead. I'm not exactly sure where he is from. You've got Chase Oliver, the guy who was notorious in Georgia for, quote unquote, spoiling an election by stealing votes from someone else. Fascinating how that works, how you steal a vote that someone voluntarily gives to you. But we don't have big contenders. There's been a lot of whispers and rumors about Dave Smith and some other big comedians running. And there have been some rumors about some intellectual dark web guys popping out of the woodwork to run. So
is Jacob Hornberger officially declared? Is he running?
Oh yeah, Jacob Hornberger also, and also from Virginia. So
Jacob a lot.
Jacob's run for office before. He ran for the LP nomination in 2020. And I gave his nomination speech. Chase Oliver's run. I'm not sure about Lars. I don't know if he's run. I don't know much about him.
So what about Spike Cohen? I was hoping he might be your nominee in 2024.
Lots of rumors about him potentially jumping in, but he has not announced. So he's one. You know, a lot of people are wondering if Justin Amash will jump in. No announcement yet. So
what about Larry Sharp?
No announcement yet. I think he might run in New York again. Everybody's playing very coy right now. They're like, we're not going to announce too soon. Keep our cards close.
Sure. It's still early.
It's still early, but it's like political season has started. So everyone's antsy. Everyone's antsy to see what's going to happen.
And everyone's just looking for options.
Yep.
I can't think of any election in my lifetime where people have been so desperate for a real viable third option for the White House. And I think they would also look at libertarian and third party candidates more for congressional races, gubernatorial races, and local races too. So I know that you have a literally Herculean task ahead of you as the party chair, really trying to organize these state ballots and local ballots and putting libertarian candidates on every ballot. And I know that is your goal. And you guys did really well in my state, Oklahoma. The Libertarian Party here is very strong. Before that, I was a member of the Libertarian Party of Texas, and organization there was always really strong. And we've managed to get some candidates elected, but I feel like now is the time, more than ever in the party's entire long history, that you have a real chance of getting people elected to positions of power. And my goal is to see more libertarians in Congress.
Yep, absolutely.
And I hope that they don't have to run as Republican or Democrat to win. So I'm praying for you, even though I'm no longer in the party. I really want you guys to succeed. And I want to see libertarians in Congress so that we can actually, follow the Constitution. I mean, we need a lot more of you in the Congress to work with our next president, which brings me to the question of Kennedy, who's kind of the elephant in the room. I'm talking to a lot of libertarians who've reached out to me because I've known him for 16 years. And they're like, hey, would you put some feelers out to Bobby to see if he's interested in maybe being the Libertarian Party nominee in 2024? I know a lot of libertarians really like him.
Yep, they do.
And, Bobby is married to the Democratic Party. And a lot of us, myself included, are trying to convince him that, Bobby, you know what's going to happen. I mean, Biden's got the super delegates. That's the ball game. They're going to Bernie you so hard.
Yep.
And the thing is, a lot of people say, well, he should wait to get screwed at the Democratic convention before jumping ship to an independent or third party. And I'm like, folks, look at the calendar. That's not how the electoral calendar is going to work. The Libertarian Party has their convention, I believe, over Memorial Day weekend. So that's the end of May 2024. That's when you'll choose your nominee. Yep. So if Bobby waits until, August, I believe, is when the Democrats have their convention, it'll be too late for him to jump ship and run with any other party. By then, the Republicans will have chosen their nominee. Their convention is in July. The Libertarians will have chosen their candidate in May. So I guess my question to you is, what are you hearing from your fellow libertarians within the party about Kennedy, and would you guys even consider nominating him if he was interested?
Well, he tweeted out a Lou Rockwell link today, which got everyone super excited.
Yeah.
People are a little skeptical about his position on Second Amendment rights and some of his positions on climate change.
Right.
I think they absolutely love that he's changed a lot of his positions, and it seems to have happened in connection with what he experienced with the lockdowns and mandates. Right. So that's really encouraging. I try to encourage everyone to give people a little bit of room to grow. And I think that now is an especially good time to do that, not because of the presidential race. People are always going to try to glom on to us and get our nomination to run on vanity races and all of that stuff. I think now is important because there's been such a great awakening in the country since lockdowns and mandates. And I think that we should extend a little bit of generosity to anybody who is coming out of that experience with their eyes open. They're not fully libertarian yet, but they are moving in our direction. I want to extend a welcoming hand to them. And to that extent, I think people really do love RFK Jr. I think if he ran in the party, just like any other candidate, you're always going to have people who are like, you're not a real libertarian. But I think you'd also see a lot of people who are really excited.
Right.
And you'd see people who really, really wanted to bring him fully all the way over it. And were just excited that he was in the party.
I think the libertarians would be kinder to Bobby than they were to Bill Weld in 2016.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely they would.
You know?
I mean, because RFK Jr. has taken a courageous stance on medical freedom. And that's not anything. Bill Weld never did anything courageous. Like RFK Jr., whatever, his flaws and issues aside, the stuff that he did with children's health, it's courageous. And so he gets mad props from me on that. Like we really love it.
And you guys agree on so much. I mean, the Libertarian Party has been a staunch supporter of Julian Assange. Yep. He's pledged to pardon Assange on day one, plus Snowden and other national security whistleblowers. He's pledged to release the JFK files, all of them, on day one. He's trying to get us out of this war in Ukraine. And of course, we are a solidly anti-war party since our founding in 1972. And, you know, on civil liberties, he's right on the money. And that's another big issue for libertarians. So he does check a lot of the boxes. It seems there's really just a couple of boxes. But the Second Amendment, that's a big one. For libertarians, that's the Holy Grail.
It is the Holy Grail. I mean, what I would say, my advice, if I gave our advice to Robert F. Kennedy Jr., it would be to not close the door on yourself. You know,
great advice.
Don't go so far on gun control, for example, that people wouldn't be willing to hear you out.
Yeah.
Like extend yourself a little bit of wiggle room, because you never know what happens once it gets to the nominating convention. And, you know, above all, even if it happened after he tries for the nomination in August and it doesn't happen, like I would still want him to feel welcome to come join our party and at least explore it. I would always want to extend that to him.
That's awesome. And, you know, a lot of people don't know this about Kennedy. He, of course, we all know that he lost 2 of his immediate family members to gun violence, his father, his uncle.
Yeah.
But, you know, he is actually an outdoorsman, a hunter, a fisherman. He's quite proficient with a firearm. He ain't scared of guns. And I don't think he wants to take your guns. He's not that kind of Democrat where he wants to grab the guns or, you know, abolish.
Who was that guy in
Amendment.
Texas that said, "I'm coming for your AR-15"? What was
Beto.
that guy's name?
Beto.
That won't fly around here.
He became so irrelevant.
Francis.
So quickly.
His real name.
Francis.
It's Francis.
Well, Angela, you guys are in the weeds of candidates, and I still had some like general type questions.
You know what? I'm going to let Tyler ask you some questions because we are having severe weather here, and we got a possible tornado on the way. I need to do a quick weather check, guys.
Okay, you do a weather check.
I'm going to ditch out and let you guys talk. I'll be right back. Hopefully,
I'm gonna put this on in the background. Maybe you'll be a little kinder to me with Lady Liberty.
Liberty.
So, okay. When I was like learning about politics, I wanted to learn about libertarianism because you see the old political compass and you start trying to figure it out. And then I guess I'm a little confused with what's the difference between the politics of the Libertarian Party. I'm guessing it's a pretty big tent. So you probably have a lot of different. I remember having one student that told me I actually have kind of like a libertarian socialist wing inside the Libertarian Party. And I was like, really? That's amazing.
There is.
I'm a huge crypto bro. I have
Okay.
been since 2015, 2016. I followed the split of Bitcoin into Bitcoin Cash with Amari Sachet. Amari Sachet always comes out in a black and yellow hoodie, always,
Yep.
right? So that's an anarcho-capitalist.
Yep.
And I mean, I always like to go take the ideology as far as you can and then try to figure out what that means. So is the Libertarian Party for the destruction of the state completely? Or can you just kind of paint a picture for me? Like, where's Hayek? Where's von Mises? Where's Rothbard? Where's Milton Friedman? Are some of them more centrist? Some of them more radical? Like, who's the most radical of those?
You could think of it about how like the mainstream left thinks about gender. It's on a spectrum.
Okay.
We have
God help us.
You have libertarians that are more like classical liberal. Centrist is such a dirty word, and I use it as a slur, but
we're diving into gross terms. But I'm
like,
I'm a kind ear, so go ahead.
Yeah, they're like, courts and police, a little bit of welfare, a little bit of government, just the minimum, just the tip. And then you've got me, anarcho-capitalist, get rid of it all, and then you've got constitutionalist. Dude, I would be so happy with I'd be happy with a classical liberal government, I'm like, let's just keep going, but oh my gosh, like if we got there, I would be excited. And the party is very explicit about making room for all of those views. We have an agreement called the Dallas Accord that was passed many years ago at a convention in Dallas, Texas, that said the Libertarian Party is a home for people who believe in minimal government and people who are anarchists and want to abolish government. So there's your technical, full, complete answer. It's all of the above.
Okay. Well, that makes sense with the ideology of the party. You can't exclude, because that would be anti-liberty.
And then we have the banana octopus wing, as we call it, the libertarian socialists.
Okay.
It's really just
Tell me about that.
If it's voluntary. There are people who are voluntary socialists, people who literally live in communes.
Sure.
We're totally fine with that. It's like if it's voluntary and it's not like coercive, you can live in a commune, you can pool your resources.
That's where I was before I took the headlong dive into Marxist-Leninism. I called myself an anarcho-communist.
There you go.
The bread book guy. What was his name? It's slipping my mind right now. I don't know. I need some more caffeine. But I just I'll share this with you. Let me see if I can share this this real quick. My friend that runs the InfraWiki. Tell me if you can see this. Can you see this definition?
Not yet.
No? I tried this last week and it didn't come up. So if it doesn't come up, I'm just going to read it to you.
Here we go.
Okay. Have you heard of Ron Paul Maoism before?
No, this is hilarious.
Okay, here you go.
I'm extremely intrigued. Let's dig in.
Ron Paul Maoism, sometimes referred to alternatively as Ron Paul Bolshevism, refers to the curious intersection between American libertarianism, represented by Ron Paul, and communism. Maoism, Bolshevism, due to the reactionary class character of the professional managerial left, dominated synthetic left. So these are the people that hate me. Juxtaposed with the libertarian movement in the countryside, whose class relations is more proletarian. The Ron Paul Institute also promotes anti-imperialist positions, despite being anti-imperialist for different reasons than Marxist-Leninists. Furthermore, communists should also oppose, like libertarians, the Federal Reserve System, which keeps profit rates artificially high by printing money and high government debt, which is a way to use unproductive capital and PMC's professional managerial class. So these are the people giving me a bad name. But what do you think about that page?
I'm taking notes on it right now on my phone, which is
you should look into it.
Distasteful to do when you're on screen, but I'm writing it down so that I can remember it.
Yeah.
That doesn't. So it's a little like weird that someone went to the trouble to write it out with a full definition. An
internet meme amongst people like in their 30s that are really into politics,
right?
Like Haas of Infrared, Jackson Hinkle, CPI. I'm a part of it. I can talk to you all day and we're going to find a lot to agree on.
Which is, puts me in the hot seat. People are like, you can't go talk to communists. And I was like,
that's okay. You can throw me under the bus if need be. I'm a
did
tough guy.
I said I was going to do issue coalitions. I think people thought I was kidding.
Yeah.
So here I am. I'm sticking to my guns. I'm doing what I said I would do. I mean, it makes perfect sense that you're going to find people who are radical and principled who line up on a couple of issues.
Mm-hmm.
If you have absolute contempt for our current government institutions, chances are there's going to be some things that you agree on, like abolishing our horrendous foreign policy.
Yes.
That I don't see what the controversy is on aligning with that and running with it as far as you can, like that's a good thing.
Well, yeah, I mean, Lenin in the State and Revolution, he looked at what destroyed the Paris Commune, and he said, you have to destroy the state mechanism. And then where we would disagree is he said, rebuild it in the image of the working class. That's the difference. And I have a really good friend. I actually tried to get him to come on here tonight. He's my libertarian friend, John. I always say, I'll build the bullet trains and you live in the woods. And that's where but I'll bring up the reason that I left anarcho-communism.
Okay.
And this might be the sunset on our friendship here, but
the sunset.
Here we go. So it's an issue of power, like how we see power.
Okay.
And also my main thing with libertarianism that I would love, and I want to talk about this in the kindest way possible, of course, but I always want to ask, like, well, who created the present government? And I see it's often like you guys will say socialists created it. I listened to a lecture from Murray Rothbard on who created the Federal Reserve, and he was saying socialists created the Federal Reserve. But to me, it's pretty obvious that capitalists created the present American government. So if you destroy the government, the class that created it will just create it again. What would you say to that?
I think there's different people who created different layers of it. There was definitely a coup at the beginning, at the founding of the country, where the Articles of Confederacy got tossed out and they put in the Constitution. I would have preferred the Articles of Confederacy. I think the people who rammed the Constitution through did a better job, with that governing document than any governing document we've seen get passed. But I think that most of us, if we knew about them at the time back then, they were kind of like local elites.
Okay.
I'm trying to think. I think that they would largely be capitalists, not socialists. And I mean, of course, everybody's going to say, yes, Angela, they're capitalists. I mean, the reason that I kind of pause and reflect on that is because I wasn't literally there. And I have not done a deep dive, like historian analysis to see like where every like dollar that they got came from, to see if there was some scheme or whatever, but generally, yeah, capitalism. Now, when we move up to the Federal Reserve, I mean, from my perspective, with what I view about central banking, I would say that that's like a champagne socialist elite, a very different type of elite. And that it's, when I say socialism, I'm not necessarily talking about for the people.
Right.
And here we might start to, get into like
the words get twisted
terminology. Yeah.
And for me, you go ahead. I want to cut you off.
This is more stuff that you'd read about in Tragedy and Hope, or The Naked Capitalist, where they talk about like this quote unquote cabal of elites that's out in the open. And it's not anything about, like certain Jewish families running banks. It's nothing like that. It's not race-based. It's like, these are the power players. Here they are. These are the people in power. They like to throw out this like quasi-socialism to appease the masses. But really, it's all about lining their pockets with as much money as possible. And I believe that the people who created the Federal Reserve were all about that.
Well, I always think like J.P. Morgan played it. And I always say, okay, J.P. Morgan, if you're a socialist, then let's nationalize your banking system. or let's Mr. Rockefeller, if you're a socialist, let's nationalize your oil supply. Don't be passing it down from kid to kid like this. And that's where, I mean, it's just like when I got off the bread book train, it was just that's where we're going to disagree, is an element of power. And I feel that to protect ourselves from Bill Gates buying 500,000 acres of American farmland, you're going to need a government that stops him from doing that. I guess my libertarian friend would say, no, we'll just all not participate, right? We'll just mass non-compliance. Come to my house over my dead body. And I go, buddy, the other side will organize, and they will surround your house and throw a Molotov cocktail inside. That's what happened in the Paris Commune. And that's why Lenin and Marx were like, you workers got to organize and create your own government to defend yourselves, because the capitalists will surround you and slaughter you in mass. And when I heard that, that's when it clicked for me.
Very true.
The bourgeois state and the proletarian dictatorship. It's gonna be one or the other. It'd be nice if we could write a fancy document and we all abide by it and get along.
What's crazy? It sounds like you're both kind of saying the same thing.
Yeah, I mean, that's why we're talking. It's fun times. But
I approach it from a more a Hans Hermann Hoppe perspective of like a community. People call it covenant communities. The unfortunate thing is usually when you talk about a Hoppe, people are like, oh my gosh, he doesn't like gay people. He doesn't. And you think about all like the moral panic associated with it. And I think about it more with like property rights and self-defense. And, like this is where I'm at. This is where you're at. We're our neighbors. We largely agree, about the important things. And
for sure,
we're not okay with someone coming and overthrowing us or trying to ram. Not like they're like, not just like, oh, I have an ugly, painting on my building, but like, oh, let's all decide that, Rockefeller comes to town and we'll sell him all of our oil, like that kind of crap. Like, no, let's make better decisions and that sort of thing.
I like that.
I do want to get to our audience questions because we have some Q&A. Our viewers submitted some questions, and I'd like to move to that portion of the show with our remaining time. And I'll get to the first one here. Is Jackie in Argentina, one of our regular viewers, who asks, I understand the core principle of libertarianism is to minimize state intervention and maximize individual liberty. My question is then, where do you draw the line? I do want the state to regulate air travel safety, for instance, and I believe no human being should be denied access to health care. Is that an anti-libertarian position?
I think that might, air travel regulation would fall within classical liberalism. Human beings being denied access to health care. You can really take that apart and get into the mechanics of it. Medicare for all, universal health care is not a libertarian position. Rothbard himself said you're allowed one heresy. Everybody's allowed a heresy and an exception. So if that were to be your heresy, I think most people would be cool with you, unless you're arguing on the internet where no one is a true libertarian, and you would be tossed.
That's right. Unless all the roads are privately owned, you're not a real libertarian.
But who would build the roads? That's always the
get out there and build
question.
them yourself.
Who would build the roads without
create
government?
A market?
I will blow up the roads. I hate the roads so much. I'm just gonna scrape them off the face of the earth.
Well, I mean, have you driven on the roads in America lately? Government's not doing a very good job of building the roads.
Private military,
kind of their one job, right? They have 2 jobs, 3 jobs. You're supposed to distribute the mail, raise an army, and secure the borders. How we doing?
No.
How we doing on that? I mean, has anyone looked at the southern border lately? I don't think we're doing very good.
Send those drones to deliver some packages.
What would the libertarian answer be to the southern border issue, to immigration?
Ooh, the libertarian answer would be to go back in time and stop messing with South American countries' politics and creating problems that drive people to our borders. That is a response that you're not going to get from a lot of people in the Libertarian Party, but I think it is.
Well,
And I agree 100%, which is the same thing that Bobby Kennedy is saying. That's his position as well, is we got to fix the reason they're coming here in the first place. But we have a more immediate problem. We are literally being invaded at our southern border. And my question is, how do we stop that invasion? If I were president, I'd call up the damn military. What would you do?
I mean, what do we want? I think the first thing we've got to do is, what outcome do we want? Do we want to let people in who are peaceful? Do we want to let no one in? Do we want to change our immigration laws? Do we want to change our amnesty laws? Do we want to change some of our visa policies? There's a U visa. People who are victims of violent crime get to stay. There's so complicated. And I think you need like a really thorough analysis of the problem, but also like to decide what we want. And right now people are not in agreement. If we're going to tighten up the border, that's going to cost a lot of money.
Would you close the border now to stop this flow of immigration until we can get a handle on it?
I mean, I think that it would be totally reasonable to put some sort of short-term stoppage there. The problem is there's no such thing as a temporary government program. Like, it doesn't exist. It literally doesn't exist. We got to have something more than that. Like, anything that we set up there is not going to go away. Right. ICE isn't even supposed. That was when did ICE come into play? Right after 9/11.
Department of Homeland Security thing. Yeah. Yep. After 9/11, we got ICE.
How do we get rid of a problem?
Before that, it was just INS.
Right.
You know.
Well, I wanted to piggyback on that. You said that about South America. We need to leave South American countries alone. And that made me think of the original 9/11, which was the assassination of Salvador Allende in Chile. And I would call him a communist. Michael Hudson, the economist Michael Hudson, he always says for libertarianism to work, or for Milton Friedman, is my understanding, the Chicago boys went down there and rebuilt the economy after the assassination of Allende because he wanted to nationalize the copper supply, and they put Pinochet in. But Michael Hudson's point is, like, to get a true free market, you have to round up all the socialists and communists in a soccer stadium and kill them in mass, because we want to nationalize the copper supply. So I've always heard that as a
first they came for the communists.
Well, we always cause them the most trouble. So what do you think about that?
We don't have any business deciding what some other country does. Like, it's none of our business if someone else wants to nationalize copper. Right. Like, it's just 100% not our call here in the United States. It's something that other people have got to work out within their countries. It's one of the reasons that I'm a big proponent of secession and breaking up countries to make them smaller and smaller. People just fundamentally don't agree. That's right. I think it's okay. Like, it's totally okay. It's none of my business to decide how people in Chile or Peru want to organize their government.
Well, that's what,
and that's the whole reason we had a civil war in the first place, was the question of secession. And of course, libertarians support states' rights to secede from the Union. But, something that's kind of interesting, and I don't think a lot of Americans know this because they don't read Soviet history. They don't know the first thing about the Soviet Union. One of the things that's interesting about the original Soviet Constitution, they actually gave their states the right to secede, which is something that has never been allowed in the United States.
Interesting.
It is.
I mean, I think it was supposed to be allowed, but obviously that's not the way it went down. I thought of a better answer to your border question. I think we need to do some diplomacy in international relations. I think we need to probably have a conversation with the countries where people are leaving en masse and see if there's something that we can undo over there. Or some burden we can alleviate that is going to be more cost effective and short term than putting up walls and dealing with stuff here. Like, can we rehouse people? Can we get them back there? Is there anything we can unscrew?
So you're not of the opinion that we should just boot them back to where they came from and say, you're on your own, kid.
We destroyed your country. Now get out of ours.
Now get out of ours.
Get back to your.
I mean, yeah, we can send people back. I mean, we can send people back, certainly, but that's not a long-term.
Right,
how
we're
many
sending him
people can
back
we
to the
send back?
hellhole that we created.
Right.
Yeah.
How many people do we send back? Like, is that just a permanent? I don't see that as a short-term temporary fix because they could just keep coming back.
So you disagree with Donald Trump's solution because that's always been his stated position.
Yeah, well, I just don't think
send them back and build a wall.
To me, it's just talking about like, what are we going to do about this oozing blister on our skin? It's like, well, why is there an oozing blister on your skin? It's never asked. You know, maybe assassinating leaders of South America that want to nationalize their national resources and feed their population. Maybe if you didn't do that, you know, but I don't know. I'm just getting the feeling that you're an anti-imperialist, Angela, which
very much so.
Lenin's main book was Imperialism, the Highest Stage of Capitalism. That was his most famous text. He was an anti-imperialist.
That's
right. But it appears that maybe the bad taste with libertarianism in my mouth is sometimes you guys' economic theories have been used after assassinating a South American president. Like, evidently someone was threatened in America by the nationalization of Chile's copper supply, or like Elon Musk said, we'll coup whoever we want, when in Bolivia Evo Morales wanted to nationalize the lithium supply. They don't like their resources taken away for some reason, which to me is textbook imperialism. So they kill the leader, and then they tell Milton Friedman, get in there, Milton, and work your Chicago boy magic. But
it's let's make a deal, you know.
Yeah, it's just when I hear that you're against imperialism, I'm all for that. I mean, if we could fix that in America, a lot of the rest of it will fix itself.
Absolutely. And then people, I get so annoyed. People are like, that's isolationism. I'm like, it's not isolationism to stop murdering people. It's really not. Like, first of all, it's a good idea. It's a good idea. Second of all, there's this thing called peaceful diplomacy, free trade, among nations. When goods don't cross borders, troops will. Why don't we try trading goods, not murdering people or trying to rob their natural resources? Don't even get me started on that. Yeah, right. And then there's the IMF and the whole nother layer of this global network of supervillain thugs who are trying to steal everybody's natural resources.
Well, they do that with money too. They're doing it with crypto right now.
Absolutely.
Like they're shutting down Coinbase is the main crypto exchange in America.
Yep.
It's on its last legs. And I was telling my wife, I said, they do the same thing. They did this in the 70s when they took the dollar off the gold standard. You could buy gold at $35 an ounce. It went up to $1,000 an ounce. And too many working class people did that and started getting out of wage slavery. And then the Fed's like, all right, we got to manipulate the gold price. We can't be, these wage slaves are escaping. Well, now with crypto, a lot of working class people have escaped wage slavery. And now they're trying to put the boot down on that as well. It's the imperialism of money.
Absolutely.
Speaking of imperialism and money, we have a great question here from David's View.
That was a great question.
Asks Angela, what's the libertarians' view on BRICS?
Oh, on BRICS. I mean, that's a really broad question. I could give just a really broad answer, which is like it's none of our business what other countries do with their money or what alliances they make. How technical do we want to get here talking about BRICS? There's so much I could go into.
Do you think a multipolar world is a good thing?
I do, absolutely.
Okay, well, we agree on that.
Yeah, I mean, BRICS is a reaction, right? It's a reaction to American empire. That's all that is. That's
well, we've treated them so well. I don't know why they're trying to create their own monetary system.
It's a reaction to American conquest. It's entirely predictable. I'm surprised it hasn't come around sooner.
Me too.
Honestly, I am too. Yeah.
Right? I guess the only reason it hasn't come around sooner is because the United States military keeps murdering the people that try to do it. Like Gaddafi,
That's right.
These guys
like
are probably
this.
operating their countries from panic rooms, you know, like freaking out anytime someone brings them a tray of food. Is this a CIA guy poisoning
Right.
my meal?
They're flirting with seizing billions of dollars from Russia. Why would you keep your money in this currency? If you're
Heck no.
like, they seize the truckers' dollars, they seize
Right.
Putin's
Yep.
dollars. And I love when they go out and they explain it. They're like, if you just do what we say, it's not going to happen to you.
So psychotic. So psychotic.
That's
It's
not how
like-
this works.
Yeah, it's like a horror movie, but it's real life, and it's like on a much larger scale than just one psycho killer with a knife in one house on some dark street.
And we're his victims. Speaking of victims, poor Scott. He's not here to speak for himself.
Yeah, I mean,
but
we touched on that
talked
earlier.
about this at some length. Douglas in Fairbanks, Alaska, asks Angela, why did the Libertarians cancel Scott Ritter's speech at Rage Against the War Machine rally in D.C.? I thought Libertarians hated censorship. Care to explain?
I mean, quite frankly, no, because Scott and I had a conversation about him asking me not to talk about it publicly, and I feel that it's appropriate for me to like respect that request.
Well, we've heard Scott's side of the story. He was pretty vocal about it with us in an interview, but we wanted to give you the opportunity to tell yours.
Yeah, but Scott asked me not to publicly talk about it, and so
Well,
I think
hey,
that's the appropriate thing for me to do.
I have a good segue then. That'll be interesting. We'll see. I really want to end on a good note, so I'm like looking at the clock and I'm like, when should I ask this one?
All right.
Why not? Go for it.
I'm just curious, Angela. Are you familiar with the fact that communists want to destroy the state as well? Have you ever heard that?
Certainly I have.
Okay.
Certainly I have. I mean, the problem usually is that they want to rebuild it in a different format, and then that makes us, you know, not so excited as libertarians.
Right. But I was just curious if you knew that, like, in like the idea of like OG Marxism is that eventually the state will just dissolve and die once we set the means of production free enough to where technology is so well developed and so advanced that you can buy a Tesla for $1. And then at that point, it's like
post scarcity.
Yeah, post scarcity.
Yeah,
so our
totally.
kind of idea is like, as long as there's scarcity, there's going to be one class trying to oppress another class and put them in slavery, more or less. And until then, the state is a tool by which one class oppresses the other. So it will exist as long as there's scarcity. That's our way of seeing it.
Which
So
makes
it's
a lot
kinda
of
like,
sense to me.
It's kind of like there's a crazy person in the room. You know, there's a gun in the middle of the room. If the crazy person gets the gun first, I know what's going to happen to my kids, or I can get it and protect my kid. And that's how we see the state. But in the long run, I was just curious if you'd ever heard of this, that in the long run, like, socialism's the in-between stage when you have a working class state.
Yep.
But ideally, you would use the state to set the means of production free, as they say. Like, they're mining helium-3 on the dark side of the moon in China.
Mm-hmm.
You know, they have high-speed rail crisscrossing the country. You can't do that in America because Bill Gates owns 500,000 acres of farmland. He just sits on it and doesn't do it. I don't know.
Selling.
I don't know if old Farmer Gates gets out there and plants a soybean or two. I don't think so.
Yeah.
But eventually, when you raise the living standards high enough, scarcity starts to disappear, and then the state dissolves. But I guess where we disagree is, you want to get rid of the state now? Is that true, or would that be a misrepresentation?
As soon as possible.
Okay.
Smash the state.
Yeah.
That's
I mean,
what
I don't have a
libertarians
magic
believe.
wand. You know, I don't have a magic wand. And so I would start getting rid of things like immediately. I'm like, which department can I cut now?
Yeah.
What's on my list for next week? How many days will it take to, you know?
So one of my best friends is a libertarian, and he says the problem with you communists is you're never going to give up your state, right? And I'd imagine that would be your criticism.
Too much government, I think, is
I
the
think
libertarian objection to
it
socialism.
is. I mean, my criticism is really that I look at what happened. I keep looking at what happened. It's my criticism is the real communism has never been tried thing. Like that
Right.
when people tell me that, and I listen to them in good faith, and I'm not trolling them, and they're not trolling
I'm not
me.
one of those people.
Sure, I'm like,
Yeah.
but can it be like? Because
Yeah.
I feel like it has been, and every time they try, it kind of falls apart in this really violent, bloody
Do you
way. And
do you feel real capitalism has ever been tried?
in small doses, absolutely.
Okay.
We don't have it now, though. Like, I don't think that we have it now.
Well,
I
I'm
think
glad
that
we're having this conversation.
Tyler, I know communists believe that the ultimate communist state would be not to have a state, but has that ever actually happened in a communist country, though?
No,
They've
and
never
I mean, you
reached
can
that
say it's a
ultimate
cop out,
stage, right?
but we see it in like 1,000 year, like it's
Sure.
it's multiple centuries.
What
It's
about
not.
Zapatistas? Are they pretty close? Are there
From my
there's a couple
understanding,
of communities across the
yeah, they're more
world.
anarcho-communists
Okay.
than like the CPI persuasion. But
Yeah.
we're not, I heard Caleb talking the other night. He's like, we're not really dyed in the wool Marxist Leninists either. That's kind of the closest to what we are. But, by the book, a lot of them are atheists, and I'm not an atheist. I'm a Jesus follower. So,
Nice.
but
Conservative Christian communist. Isn't that how you describe yourself, Tyler?
yeah, that's me.
MAGA communists.
There you go.
Kind of, sort of.
Yeah.
Something like that.
Close.
So
All
we
right.
have another question here from Spirit of Goldfish in Madison, Wisconsin. Neoliberal ideology has twisted the meaning of free market into the opposite of what the classical economists like Adam Smith intended. The classical economists defined a free market as free from economic rents, unearned income extracted by feudal landlords. Austrian and libertarian neoliberals have no role for the government in the economy. Care to respond?
Let's break this apart a little bit.
This is Michael Hudson.
This is complex. This is good. Great.
Yeah, there's like 3 points that I want to make, but I don't know if I need to make them in the right order. I mean, I agree Austrian and libertarian neoliberals have no role. I'm a little confused about
there too.
It confuses me after landlords.
So when I think about neoliberal ideology, I think about people who are like free market Democrats. So I'll put that out there. I'm not a big fan of Adam Smith's economic writings. I am of the vein of Austrian economics, not Chicago school like Milton Friedman, although, that's better than regular markets or Keynesianism. I'm trying to take that apart a little bit. I mean, there's definitely no role for government economically in my perspective. So I think I mostly agree with that statement.
I have a question for you. This is just my personal question.
Sure.
I get one too. It's the host privilege. There's this fallacious belief when you tell people you're a libertarian, the usual response we get is, "Oh, you're just a Republican who likes to smoke weed."
Right.
They think that we're all basically Republicans. Could you define the key differences between a libertarian and a Republican?
Oh man, I mean, there's a lot. When you say key differences, I'm like, what do I pick my
Where
top
do I start?
Yeah. We're far more committed to individualism and personal choice in people's personal lives. We want to end the drug war. I do not want the United States to have the highest incarceration rate in the world. I do not support the draft. I do not take a military America first policy. If I think America first, I think about not sending our troops overseas. I think about deregulating things here and making us a prosperous and safe country that other people want to emulate. I don't think about us wielding a military cudgel over the rest of the world. I support free speech, and that includes very unpopular things like burning the American flag.
What about banning TikTok?
No, I don't want to ban TikTok. You know, I think that the NSA and the CIA are bigger threats to people here at home than TikTok and Chinese spyware.
Clean up your own house first.
Damn
Absolutely. Right. Like, so those are some of our big key differences. And there's a lot of room in the Libertarian Party for social conservatives. And what I mean by that is people who adopt socially conservative lifestyles. The difference in the Libertarian Party is that we don't believe that stuff should be enacted as law. So, you know, if you think your wife should, you know, stay at home and raise kids, whatever, that's fine. You know, we're not into passing laws that limit the rights of women.
But what about abortion? Because y'all changed the plank on abortion in
the party
platform.
And it
Can you
is
explain that?
Yeah, it's agnostic. So we have members of the party who disagree in good faith. And there are a lot of people who genuinely believe that abortion is murder and that it is taking the life of an innocent child under any and all circumstances. And there are other people who genuinely do not believe that. They believe that, you know, up until whatever XYZ number of weeks or months, it's not a baby. It's part of a woman's body, and a woman has a right to decide. So we let our candidates and our members move forward on that particular issue according to their own conscience.
Angela, I was about to ask this question.
Ahead.
You read it, Lori. This is my friend John McCarthy from CPI, but he said May 27th is a day of action to speak out in defense of the Uhuru 3 who are falsely accused of being Russian agents for opposing Biden's Ukraine policy. Can the Libertarian Party endorse this? And I have
very good, John.
I have this is their website here if anyone wants to check it out. I don't know if you can see it, but it's pretty the Biden, to me this is the Bidens showing their hands that they're fascists. They literally right after Black Lives Matter, they've rounded up 3 black socialists that do good work in the very rich part of East St. Louis. That's satire. Right. So, yeah, what do you think? Can the Libertarian Party support that?
I've followed it a little bit for something like that. I'd have to float it by and see if I could get an official resolution. It looks like gross, you know, abuse by our federal government. It also looks like, unfortunately, a little bit of a cautionary tale. Be very careful who you take money from when you're over here and you're doing political activism. It's totally wrong and messed up if you know, take money inadvertently from some other place and end up pinned as an agent.
It's crazy that you know you can't take. I
think this is
racist.
more about speech than money, though, don't you? They're using the money as an excuse because it's the only crime they can find.
Of course,
this is really about criminalizing speech and those who support Russia openly.
I mean, I have good friends that work at RT. You know,
totally. I know people that work at RT too. They have every right to do so, but they're making an example out of these guys, though. It sucks. I think it's wrong. And I also, at the same time, want to tell everybody, like, proceed with caution because this.
No, you're just being a realist.
Yeah, like this sucks. Like, this is a sucky thing to do, and it sucks that we live in a country where things like this can happen to you.
We're in a new Cold War. It's like the McCarthy era all over again.
Yeah, Red Scare 3.
It's so weird, right? Hearing Red Scare come from Democrats. It's so weird.
And the Republicans too, man, they've gone China nuts. We went from Russia to China, China.
That's the different Red Scare.
Is the mental illness of the right, like Russiagate was the mental illness of the left. I think the whole thing's a big psyop. That's
the most embarrassing cringe comment that I heard in opposition to war with Ukraine is as a conservative saying, you know, we shouldn't be sending money to war with Ukraine. We need it for China.
That's right.
Like, oh my!
Yeah. So I take it you're not for World War III with China, then?
I oppose World War III.
Well, that's
I'm going to take that courageous stand. I oppose World War III.
I wanted to play Fallout in real life. You know, that's what I was looking.
Well, I hope you will come on board with the Uhuru hands off Uhuru movement.
Yes.
I think it's right up the Libertarians' alley on just civil liberties and free speech grounds and I hope that you will join us on that.
Build a ton of goodwill with my side as well.
I've been reading about it. I think I'm going to maybe kick that to the the Foreign Policy Committee and see if they want to
Great.
do a little write up on it or something. Try to
solidarity.
Yeah.
Right on. Right on. So, what is a libertarian? You are asked by Theory 816.
A libertarian is someone who believes in, free speech, free markets, property rights, and individualism. Like, we believe that you know best how to run your life, and we don't want to get in the way of that.
Nice.
Personal and
Short,
economic
sweet,
freedom.
to the point. I like it. Jeff, do we have any more questions? You got anything else for us tonight? I don't know if we wanted to open the phones or not. Do you feel like taking some live calls in the last 10 minutes?
It's always a wild ride, the
Yeah.
phone calls.
We don't get to pre-screen those, so you never know what kind of nut's going to call.
See if we get any. I will just say, Angela,
Some guy
that
breathing heavy into the phone, like
while
Darth
we wait
Vader.
for a phone call, I was telling Lori before we got on here that, like what brings us together, the internet wants us to argue about stupid stuff, but I can tell that you do things in real life, and that's a huge dividing line between who actually cares and who doesn't. And I told her that, while we might disagree on this or that, we agree on so much. And all I really want from a politician is someone who will do some honest soul searching.
Yeah.
And you said this earlier. You're like, I'm constantly looking into my own soul, seeing, am I doing this right? Are my motives pure? Could I do this a little better? Am I doing the right thing? And that means the world to me. We might disagree on the nationalization of the oil supply, but I will figure that out later. Until then, let's just get people that are honest and have integrity. And I know that really care about this country, because I don't think I saw it in this country when Hillary Clinton lost in rural Missouri. She did not look in the mirror and ask, why do they hate me so much enough to vote for a reality TV show star with the golden toilet?
That's right.
Why do they hate me? What did she do? She said the Russians are the reason they hate me.
Yep.
That's not why. And Nancy Pelosi is not honestly looking in the mirror and trying to figure out where could I be a little better for the American people. These people are psychopaths. Absolutely.
They don't care what you think.
It's
They just don't care.
the American Uniparty, Republicans and Democrats. I don't really think there's any redeeming this bird. As Bill Hicks said, the same guy is holding both puppets. And I really appreciate talking to you and getting to know you. And thank you for being an honest, soul-searching individual.
Well, thank you for having me. It was delightful getting to know you and getting to chat with Lori. I'd love to continue the conversation. I would love to do a deep dive one day on the World Economic Forum.
Amen.
Yeah.
And that whole cabal and, what is globalism? Is it something we should oppose? Is that a bad term? I would love to dig in on something like that.
That you just gave me a question that I actually want to ask Tyler, our communist friend. What is the difference between globalism, which I know that communists oppose, and internationalism, which is, of course, at the heart of communist beliefs?
For real communists, it always just boils down to like which class is in control. So when libertarians hate globalism, it's because the working class is not doing globalism.
Right.
The ruling class, the bourgeoisie, the dictatorship of the bourgeoisie, right? 1,000 ultra wealthy billion trillionaires, people with so much money you don't even know their names. I've heard the Rockefeller family has so much money tied up in an onion of trusts that it's impossible to figure out how much money they actually have, but they have enough money to set up the CIA and assassinate people like me around the world for 80 years because we want to nationalize what they've stolen from what God put in the ground for everybody, So internationalism would be like working classes working together across borders to prevent themselves from being raped by the ultra wealthy and not being able to feed their children. That to me is what internationalism is. Whereas globalism is George Soros and, the Biden
IMF.
crew. The IMF, the World Bank, Victoria Nuland, twirling their mustaches.
That's like international fascism in my mind. Globalism is international fascism. It's the marriage of state and corporate power, only in these unelected, international bodies.
Yeah. Right. So like the other day, there's a great guy, Eyes Wide Open. It's a new YouTube channel. He's making these documentaries, the history of the CIA. And he explained Operation Gladio in Italy. And it was the Vatican laundered money from the CIA, which was set up by the oil bankers, to pay off mafia hits to execute 500 communists that were going to vote in communism in Italy in 1948. And that to me is globalism. Internationalism would be the working class working together to prevent that from happening. And honestly, between me, it would be backing the communists in that to have a real democracy in that case. And I think most libertarians that's the issue. If the people of a place want to vote in communism, are they free to do that from a libertarian perspective? And I think Angela would say yes. I believe she would.
Yes, they are.
But these globalists do not. That's what McCarthyism and imperialism's all about. Like, in Indonesia, they threw 1 million school teachers in the river in the 60s. Like, they just can't allow anyone with that tinge of like working class sympathy to exist. And that's the difference to me.
I may sit over on the other side of the ocean shaking my head at you, but it is absolutely not our business to interfere with the government of other countries. It doesn't matter how communist it is. It's just not our
100% with you on that.
We can scowl. We can just sit and scowl. We'll be okay.
Well, I feel that Soviet Russia and China today, they just wanted to be left alone. Like, look at Cuba. Haven't they been embargoed for like 75 years?
Well, the communists weren't the one asking for the Cold War. They wanted to be friends after World War II. They wanted our alliance to continue. We were the ones. It was the West. It was Churchill. It was Truman who decided we were going to be enemies instead of friends and partners. That's
tragic.
Unfortunate. And here we are going down that same road again. And I see it coming. And that's why I'm doing everything in my power to reach out to communists, because I don't want to see what happened here in the United States in the 1910s and 20s and 50s and 60s in the two Red Scares. I don't want to go back to McCarthyism. I don't want to go back to that kind of stupid. I thought the first Cold War was dumb. It's dumb to do this again. It doesn't make any sense, and it only makes the warmongers rich, and it makes the rest of us poor and miserable. And that's why this discussion was lovely tonight, because we were able to bring these seemingly opposing viewpoints together. And once you sit down in a room with someone and you talk to them, you find out not only are they a nice person, but all of their ideas aren't crazy. And there might be some things that we can actually find some common ground on. We're never going to agree on everything, but I think we made some great strides tonight, or perhaps to quote the communists, a great leap forward. A great leap forward.
Doesn't always go 100% our way, but we try. It's
there
good.
You go.
It's worth a shot.
This was great,
Angela. I really appreciate
think you're the best
on.
Libertarian Party chair that we've had in a long, long, long time, and I hope that you continue to stay in that chair next year and for many years to come.
Absolutely.
Thank you very much.
And I love your background, Angela. It's very like alchemist, Carl Jung vibes. I love it.
Thank you. Yeah,
very cool.
This is my green room. Everything is green. I have a green tapestry, green carpet, green fake grass, so I can touch grass since I never leave my house.
Green like money, because libertarians love money, baby.
That's me. I'm the monopoly man over here.
I love it too. I'm the socialist stock trader. So.
Nice.
Bring on the greenbacks.
But we like real money. We're not fans
of
Federal Reserve notes, but we like gold and silver.
That's right.
BTC.
Stacking Satoshis.
That's right.
Thank you again, Angela. Have a wonderful evening. We'll see you soon.
Thanks for having me.
Take care, my friend.